Hey guys, welcome again, and thanks for joining me on another trip through Phantom of Darkness's Narration Corner. Before I completely begin, I just wanted to state that if you guys like this video, you want to share, you want to subscribe, any of that kind of stuff, comment, I would appreciate it. So go ahead and hit that comment, like, subscribe, and share it because it really helps me out, and I would really appreciate it considering how much I love these videos. I want to get them out to as many people as possible so that they can enjoy it like you guys do. So without further ado, here are ghost stories that happened at a computer lab. Story number 1. The Her. The following events took place at an elementary school in Tempe, Arizona, between 2001 and 2003. The accounts are personal experiences that I had while working there as a computer lab assistant. I worked in the computer lab with grades K through 5. The lab is positioned in the rear of the school, where not a lot of people travel often. That is an important detail for the story. The school was established in 1971, so it's not that old, but who knows what had happened on the land. Okay, so on with the true stories. One day, when a kindergarten class was in the lab, a particularly well-behaved group, one of the little girls, who did not speak very good English, ran over to me and was crying. She was speaking Spanish, which I was not fluent in, so I didn't really know what was wrong. Another little girl, who was bilingual, told me that she saw a ghost. I tried to question the child further since I have always been intrigued, but she didn't want to talk about it really. I coaxed a little more and finally got her to say it was the Her. I'm guessing that she called it the Her because she only spoke a little English and mostly Spanish. She probably didn't realize the translation of language or something, but then that combination of words freaked me out big time. The class finished, and I was left alone in the lab with no further incident for that day. Another time, when one of the custodians helped me move paper to a storage room in the lab, a little history is necessary here, but I'll keep it brief. The computer lab bordered the wall of the library. This is the same side that the kids were sitting on when they said they saw the Her. Over the first summer of my employment, the lab was remodeled, as was the library, to have a space between the walls with an office on either side. My almost office became a storage room instead. So like I said, we moved a whole year's supply worth of paper into the storage room and stacked it neatly in the corner. There were dozens of boxes, and it took a couple hours to move them all over and store them. So around 2 weeks later, someone came and needed some paper for a printer. I unlocked the door. Only myself and the custodian had a key to the door because they hadn't made copies yet, and found the room in total disarray. Paper boxes were moved around into weird nonsensical positions, and some were even emptied out onto the floor. For example, 3 boxes were stacked on the opposite end of the room on their sides. Several boxes were crammed onto the tiny server table. Nothing like we left it. I contacted the custodian, and he swore that he did not go into the room. I believed him, and I didn't say why he would trash the place even if he had. Another incident happened when I came into the lab early one morning to start up the computers. I noticed something in the middle of the room on the floor. I turned on the lights, and it was a pyramid-style pile of sand on the floor. I called the custodian and asked if my room had been serviced the previous night, and he informed me that it wasn't scheduled until the current night for cleaning. I asked him if he would come over and vacuum real quickly because there was sand all over the place. Well, he came and looked shocked and just said, "Wow, There is sand all over the place. Now, the funny thing is that after the sand was vacuumed from that spot, he went around the surrounding area and there was no clank of the sound being picked up by the vacuum. It was as though someone emptied all the sand in the room into a small pile in the middle of the room. Usually when the lab would be vacuumed, it would be very clinkety sounding since it didn't get vacuumed but a couple times a week, and it was heavily trafficked. One final incident, and the most significant in my mind, happened when it was time to film the students for their student council advertisements. It was my job to record them and upload them onto the closed circuit television. It was a somewhat new use of the technologies at that time, so I filmed all the kids without incident, usually taking them in small groups. There was one kid left that I had to film alone, a 5th grader. I filmed her speech without incident and remarked on how well I thought she had done on her speech. It was really one of the best I've ever heard a kid her age give. So when I was editing all the film to go up onto the television system, I got to her recording, and midway through the shoot, the screen went black with a booming sound as though something hit the camera. There was this muffled noise, almost like the tape was old or something, although the entire tape worked perfectly except for these 20 seconds or so. It was almost like you could hear a static sound building up, and then some sound like if you whip a tout wire. You know how it makes those tinge noises? Well, I slowed the film down using my cheesy program and did a frame-by-frame advance on it. There was one frame right before the bang and black screen where you could see a little corner of the light on the top of the film. Then, after the period elapsed, the film just came back, instantly in the next frame. It was the weirdest thing I ever saw film do. The other thing that happened was I told one of the teachers that I thought the school had a ghost, and she said nonchalantly, "Oh yeah, there's a couple of them." I didn't do any real research on it, and most of the events I discounted until later when I thought about weird things at that school. I'm sure I forgot a couple. Can post them up later if I remember. Anyway, what do you guys think? Does any of this sound ghostly or paranormal to you at all? I sure felt like most of these things did. Anyway, thanks for any thoughts you have on this. Haunted High School. Allow me to share some of my personal experiences in high school. My school was established in 1902. It is one of the oldest high schools in the country. During World War II, when we were under Japanese occupation, the Japanese army commandeered the campus and turned it into their garrison. Many of my countrymen were imprisoned, tortured, and or killed there at that time. According to rumors from some of the teachers, their skeletons are still scattered in a subterranean tunnel that runs underneath the administration building. We call it Maine. Although that rumor is unsubstantiated, historical records do show that my school has been really a garrison. When I first entered that school as a freshman in 1995, me and my classmates in my section had no idea at all of its dark history. After all, we were just 12 years old. What do we care about history? Our campus has a land area of about 4 hectares, 40,000 square miles. When you face the campus, the building to your left is the main. Next is the Science Centrum. It is a hands-on museum of scientific gadgets, experiments, and inventions. Further left is the HE building, housing a cafeteria, some classrooms, and the conference room. Behind the Centrum is the soccer field. Directly behind the main is our new building. In between our building and the soccer field are the basketball, sepek, takraw, and volleyball courts. Behind the field is the BL building. The BL is a very long, one-story L-shaped building. It contains more than 40 classrooms and 2 restrooms. One leg of the L runs beside our building. There are more buildings on the right side. So we were in the elite section. We had a building all to ourselves. There are only about 120 of us, 30 or less per year level, who have classes in that building out of a total school population of more than 4,000. We have our own faculty, separate from the faculty for the regulars. We also have a separate library and computer lab, both located adjacent to each other on the ground floor of our building. Anyway, during our freshman year, we didn't experience much paranormal activity. Just that eerie feeling that someone is watching you even though you are all alone in the boys' restroom. I even caught myself glancing to my rear just to see who's behind me while using the urinal. I would get goosebumps and could feel my hair standing on end for no apparent reason. Although it's unsettling, I didn't feel threatened. All my other male classmates would say the same thing, but we would just shrug it off as nerves for an upcoming quiz or exam. During our sophomore year, one of my female classmates, let's call her Jen, stopped going to school just 2 weeks after classes started. We were a little puzzled because we saw her earlier that day attending a school gathering. Weeks later, our class advisor gathered and informed us that Jen would no longer go to that school. She told us that Jen has been possessed by a spirit and that after exorcism, Jen no longer wishes to go back. She then told us that it's about time we were informed of the weird things that happen in our school. She claimed that Jen's possession was not an isolated case. She said that about once a year or so, a student will be possessed. All of the victims were females, and all of them the shy, quiet, untalkative type like Jen was. We wouldn't believe at first that in this modern scientific day and age, things like that still happen. We thought that our advisor, a mathematician, was putting us on, but things picked up a pace after that. Once, I was walking through the main deserted corridors after classes with a friend, looking for a certain teacher. All the offices we passed were closed for the day, as we just passed through an office that had a steel collapsible security gate, the kind where your hand can pass through the diamond-shaped struts. As its door, we clearly heard someone furiously tapping away at the keys of a typewriter inside. We were puzzled because we saw that the lights were inside, out. We went back to check, and we saw that the lights were inside and were indeed out, and that there is a locked padlock outside that door. My friend and I looked at each other and ran out that building as fast as we can. During our junior year, after our junior-seniors prom, we saw the Spaniard. We had our prom at a hotel and finished at about 2 a.m. Since some of my classmates lived too far from the city, and since we were all undergrad, about 14 to 15 years old, and couldn't sleep in the hotel, much less drive cars, we asked and was granted permission to sleep in the campus. Some of us who live in the city decided to join them. I and my 3 male friends decided to walk around the campus since we couldn't sleep. We walked along the BL, turned left and passed the CAT, Citizens Army Training headquarters, then past the outdoor swimming pool. Turned left again behind the Centrum. As we passed the main, on our right, for no reason, all 4 of us at the same time looked at the outdoor basketball court to our left. No one told us to look to the left, and in other circumstances, it would have been funny since we all turned our heads in unison. There, in the basketball court, we saw a man. Although there is something covering the face like a haze, we knew it was a man since he is wearing black trousers, and he had on a white long-sleeved shirt of a cut in the very old style. His clothes reminded me of illustrations I see in textbooks of how people dressed during the Spanish era in my country. He was floating about a foot from the ground. As he floated towards us, we could see that his legs aren't moving at all. They were rigidly together as if he was standing at attention. As he floated nearer, he slowly faded away into thin air. I couldn't believe it. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I asked my friends, "Did you see what I just saw?" Someone started to reply, "You mean that floating?" Then another interrupted and shouted, "Run!" and started running. Needless to say, we all ran. It was only later, when we compared mental notes on what we saw, that all our descriptions fed into the last detail. During our senior year, I was about 16. We had to do our thesis. It was a requirement for graduation. I and about 10 others could not finish writing it up within the deadline unless we did overtime. We were granted permission to transfer some PC units from the computer lab to the library we appropriated for ourselves that week so we could work on the papers after class hours. What we did is that after class, I would go home directly, take a shower, have dinner, and then return to the library to relive the 10 and let them have dinner. I was pretty much alone for an hour or so. About the third or fourth night, being alone for about 15 minutes, I heard a knock on the door. It was the most peculiar knock. In the first place, it sounded hollow and very light. Second, there is a pause of about a second in between knocks. It would knock, pause, knock. Third, it would knock only twice, then stop. I called out asking who it is, but no verbal reply. It knocked that same knock again. I thought it was one of the guards doing his rounds, or maybe one of my companions who forgot something. On the third set of knocking, I was already up. In the pause between the first and second knock, I opened the door. There was no one there, and immediately a very cold wind rushed into the room. It had a very bad smell, too. In a tropical country nearing summer, it is highly improbable for wind outside to be that cold, colder even than the air conditioner running a full blast. One of my classmates claimed he saw reflected on a glass window a platoon of Japanese soldiers marching through the BL corridor early one morning. When he looked back, there was nothing there. There are lots of other stories about that school. Sometimes when the guards would do their rounds during the night, they will hear a pig squealing inside one of the locked classrooms. It would push aside the chairs and throw itself on the door as if attempting to break it down, squealing the entire time. But in the morning, when the rooms are open, there is no sign of the pig. All the chairs are in order and no signs of any openings to the pig to squeeze through. Sometimes also, they will see human footprints going up the walls to the ceiling and up the backboards of the rooms when during the day before there were none. Sometimes you can also hear someone playing piano in the conference hall in the main at night. The peculiar thing is, the piano there is broken down, and the only working piano is in another building at the other side of the campus. I have lots of other paranormal experiences, not only in that school, but also in the offices where I worked and houses where I stayed. Perhaps next time I will share them there.